they can literally put you very close to being in the category of being, a traitor and being treasonous by speaking out.
Are you tired of overpaying for your gold, silver, and platinum bullion coins and bars? Then visit sdbullion.com today. SD Bullion was recently named the 177th fastest growing company in the United States by Inc. magazine. This is because they offer the absolute lowest prices in the industry and follow up with over-the-top customer service. So what are you waiting for? Go to sdbullion.com today and join more than 60,000 happy investors that save money on every precious metals purchase they make.
Hey everyone, this is Elijah Johnson with silverdoctors.com, and back with us today is former Congressman Dr. Ron Paul. Dr. Paul, thank you so much for your time today.
Good, Elijah. Good to be with you.
All right. Well, I'd first like to discuss about the assault we're seeing on free speech. Now, you recently wrote that, quote, "If this ongoing assault on free speech succeeds, then all our liberties are endangered." Now, can you explain for our viewers in what ways is our free speech under attack, and how does an attack on free speech translate to an attack on our other liberties as well?
Well, it's an attack on our other liberties if you think about the First Amendment, but what they're doing right now is they're intimidating, and they're working with social networks to put pressure on people to be penalized if you don't say the right things. And we've been on the receiving end of this already by being named in fake news in the Washington Post and other places that we're participating in fake news, and they're the ones who are the portrayers of fake news. So yes, I think it's systematic. I worry about the government and the social networks that work together for our privacy, and they do it in the name of national security. And unfortunately, the connection between Google and some of the other companies to the government is more than I like. But the reason why we should be concerned about an attack on free speech and ability to get our message out is that it involves everything else. And when I left Congress here just a few years ago, I listed certain things that I was concerned about. And I think on the top of the list was the threat that they would damage the First Amendment. And my argument being that if you cannot speak out freely and be able to and not get penalized, we even hear of people losing their life over taking positions that are contrary to the government. So if you can't express yourself and can't reach out, and you're handicapped with the services that we and the internet, it's going to be very hard to convince people of what they ought to be doing when it comes to economics and politics and foreign policy and all these things. So it is vital. A lot of people would argue that the Second Amendment is the most important. As long as you have your gun, you can defend yourself, which is a very important function. But I think the ability to communicate in the First Amendment and free speech, and I think is most important in dealing with all our other liberties.
Now, you mentioned how your institute, the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity, was actually red flagged as a quote-unquote Russian propaganda outlet. And, there's all this talk about fake news, and you're saying that really what people are doing, they're basically using a couple fake news or news hoaxes that kind of went viral a little while ago, and using that to justify government control of basically information. Can you discuss about this and what the real motive is behind this trying to control information? It's not actually just to stop fake news. It's to promote censorship and basically only let people hear what the establishment wants them to hear.
Yeah, and if we're putting out news that informs people where they can't get the news anyplace else, the only thing that they can do at the present time is to discredit that news and say, oh, he said something that indicated that we don't have to go to war with Russia, and the confrontation is way overblown. and they don't want to hear that side of the story, then they come in and sort of attacks the individuals talking in that manner. It's sort of a McCarthyism that they've done. It just all they have to do is say, oh, communist, and there you're back. And now it's Russia, pro-Russia, pro-Russia. They're actually literally trying to cancel out the current election by this method. It's demagoguery, it's control, and it's a very dangerous thing when the government gets involved. And the government is very much involved because of that they cannot stand hearing the truth. And I have a saying in my book that truth is treason in an empire of lies. Our government lies all the time. They lie us into war and so many other things. So if you're telling the truth to them, they think truth is what the government does, and that's something that they admit to. Some of the real vicious dictatorship is they determine what truth is. And even if they won't brag and claim they do that, they more or less are saying that if they want to maintain power and be able to collect the money and run the financial system the way they do, they don't want to hear about the truth. So they can literally put you very close to being in the category of being, a traitor and being treasonous by speaking out.
Now, obviously, in these times when there's so much information on the internet, we can't trust everything that we read. And also, you've pointed out that a lot of this quote-unquote fake news actually comes from the government and the mainstream. The government and the mainstream media has put out a lot of propaganda and lies throughout the years as well. So what is the best way to protect our freedom of speech and also kind of sift through the lies that are out there and find the real truth?
Well, it's not easy, and it's been going on for a long time. If you look throughout history, politicians, when I think about all the stuff we listen to by the politicians, what if every candidate and everybody that serves in the Congress was under oath? I mean, they can practically say or do anything. So it's up to the individual, the people who are listening to it. I think that this subject came up when I was running for president. I said, and I had young people supporting me. And I said, why are you supporting me? These other candidates are saying things that aren't too different. And they said, well, we don't believe them. They sort of sensed that I was sincere and I was doing my best to tell them the truth. So I think that's the ultimate test is people, if they're allowed to make their own choices and decisions, they can sort it out. But the Internet is a risky place for some people if they just believe everything they read on there, and people are going to use it. But it used to be the newspapers and then the television, and now it's the Internet. But it's up to individuals to make that decision. Sometimes, it took me a long time to fully understand how our leaders had been assassinated, like JFK and RFK and Martin Luther King. But it took, I never did get that information from the school or television or anything. But eventually you can find the truth even in a well-written book. And you have to find somebody that you do trust. But it is a job to figure that out, and there will be a lot of misinformation on the internet. But I'd much rather sort it out in a free society than where the government says, "Well, it's a mess out there, so we're going to set the rules, and we will have a truth squad, and decide what should be put out there or not, and decide whether it's legitimate." No, we have to allow people to speak out and let the people decide how they're going to handle it.
All right, Ron Paul, thank you so much for joining us today. Real quick, before we let you go, one thing that I'm sure that you've been paying attention to is, your son, Congressman Rand Paul, is bringing forth this Audit the Fed bill. And it looks like there might be a better chance of it passing this time because Trump, now going to be the next president, has been a critic of the Fed. He's said that we should audit the Fed, and there's a Republican House and Senate. What is your opinion on the prospects for passing the Audit the Fed bill?
Well, better than ever, but it's still going to be a tough road because there's so many powerful special interests, and if there's going to be curtailing of some Federal Reserve powers, even Trump has admitted, higher interest rates right now could really damage the economy. So all of a sudden, there's a bunch of realism that goes on, and the transition is horrible. The symptoms of transitioning are such that it's sort of like, I compare it to people who are on drugs. The drugs are very damaging, but stopping them, and people have tremendous reactions. The economy is like that too. So that's the kind of thing they would have to face. But the answer to your question is we have a better chance than ever, but it'll be touch and go. I just think that the special interests are really, really going to pile on and yell and scream that you can't do it now, do it some other day, that sort of thing.
All right. And where can our viewers find you online?
Okay, Ron Paul, LibertyReport.com.
Once again, thank you so much for your time, Dr. Paul.
Thank you. Good to talk to you.